Wherever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you.
Is it going to stay up? I think. Good morning. I'm Nancy Tozer, and I am on your Board of Trustees. Welcome, everyone. I welcome you to a church of reverence, where we stand in awe of the enormous potential of human nature and the wonder of nature all around us. I welcome you to a church of love, where we genuinely care for one another and seek to make this world a better place for all living things. I welcome you to a church of discovery, where we seek our individual spiritual paths and the path to truth, and where we support others in their searches. And I welcome you to a church of connectedness, where we strive to nurture meaningful connections to each other, to the world around us, and to the universe beyond. You are welcome to a church that values reverence, love, discovery, and connectedness. Welcome to East Shore. And we do have a few announcements today, so let me get started. First of all, this Sunday we are finishing up the making scarves for the homeless stand down. In the back of the church, you'll see some folks back there getting materials ready so that after service and during coffee hour, you can make a few extra scarves. All the instructions are back there. It's very straightforward and easy to do. I think I've even managed to do it once or twice. And those scarves actually will be distributed at the homeless stand down in Cleveland at the end of this month. I also have an announcement for the men's group, and I hope that this is on the correct date, just because there's not a date on here. And Ron can tell me, do I have this correct? It's Monday? Thank you. All right, so we do have an announcement for tomorrow. Thanks very much. The church's men's group is meeting tomorrow evening, 7 p.m., to hear Ron Prosick discuss fracking. The title of his talk is Fracking and Renewable Energy, an Update. Seems a shame to drag Ron on in this weather to speak to only 4 or 5 guys, so we are opening the meeting to anyone else who would like to attend. Hope to see you tomorrow at 7 p.m. And that is at East Shore as well? Hope to see you there. And here's something very, very interesting about our neighbor church. The Old South United Church of Christ in Kirtland invites us to join them in a service of installation for their new minister, Reverend Ian Lynch, on Sunday, January 18th at 1 p.m. Reverend Dr. Eric Elms, a church pastor from Omaha, Nebraska, and founder of the online church called Darkwood Brew, will be delivering the message. Music will be provided by the combined voices of choirs from Kirtland congregations, including our very own choir. Rev Denis will process in with the other ministers, all wearing their red stoles, and a reception will follow the service. And I think it'll be very lovely to be a part of our greater geographical community and take a part in that installation. And one of the most entertaining announcements that we have is that on this Thursday night past, Rev Denis and a motley group willing to brave the wind chill ventured out for beer and conversation. The first of a nearly weekly informal conversation in public venues. If you've seen any of the advertisements for beverages and banter, that's what we're talking about. If you missed it, you'll have another chance to join in the fun on Saturday, January 17th at Arabica Coffee House, West Geauga Plaza in Chesterland. And I believe that was going to be at maybe 10 a.m.?
10 a.m.
All right. So I hope to see you all there. Thanks for your attention.
Octavia Butler writes, "When apparent stability disintegrates, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change." We gather this morning to celebrate change, to honor the value of changing times. While we find comfort in stability, we know that things must always be changing or they will face death and stagnation. We know that no matter how good things may seem to the many, there are always some who know the pain of suffering. Together we seek to be a force for good in the world and to live into the only lasting truth, that everything is always changing. And John Bernardini, since I've already asked you to do a couple other things later in the service, would you do the honor of lighting our chalice now? Thank you. This morning, we light this chalice, the symbol of the covenant of the community gathered here to bring forth the light of those who have gone before us, the giants upon whose shoulders we stand, the meek from whose labor we benefit, to bring forth the warmth of the lives we live, the celebrations of success, the heartbreaks of loss, to bring forth the essence of our faith, the witness and solidarity of oppression, the dream shared of justice and compassion. This flame is the symbol of the love we celebrate this blessed day. You know, each January, many of us make resolutions for the new year, ways in which we hope to make positive changes in our own lives, changes that benefit ourselves and the people we love, and sometimes that even extends out to the wider world. And for me, the success of my resolutions isn't measured by how well or how long I stick to them, but the quality of the time that I spend reflecting on those resolutions. My goal, whatever the resolution, is to engage more deeply with life in that process of reflection. And one of the ways that we reflect together is by writing our joys and cares in this book, which usually resides on the pedestal right outside the door to the sanctuary. And then we share these requests for prayers with the gathered. This morning, we pray for Nancy Bihari's mother, Martha Heifel, who passed out of this life on December 22nd. During the last 3 years, she was cared for in Michigan by Nancy's sister, Linda. Martha was 84 and lived a good life, and she will be missed. And now I'd like to invite you to come forward and light a candle for any intention you may have that has remained unspoken or unwritten. So this morning I want to share a philosophy with you, a theology, an understanding of God that might be really new to a lot of you. And I know for myself it took a long time to kind of develop it and create it, and it feels sort of complicated. It comes from a lot of different sources. So I'm going to need your help in explaining this philosophy, okay? So I need, a good 10 or 12 volunteers. Okay, can I see some hands? Okay, I already voluntold Dan. Okay? So what I'm going to do, you can stay seated, right? So what'll happen is I will bring you a piece of paper, and John and Maria will bring you magic markers, okay? You're going to get 3 different magic markers. They could be exactly the colors you want, or they could be colors you don't want at all, okay? But what I'm going to ask you, okay, so put your hands up if you want to draw, okay? Boy, we're really getting some choir involvement here. This is good. Okay, that's already 5. Okay, Tiffany, over here. Okay, so you guys give them magic markers, randomly get the colors, right? So that you're going to be drawing God. Now, the thing about drawing God is that, God is huge and vast, and I'm giving you a minute, right? So as soon as you get your paper and pens, start drawing. Now, the thing is, how many is that so far? Okay. Okay, great. Somebody in the under 50 set. Nice. Okay. So if you don't have pens yet, put your hand up, okay? And Maria and John will get to you. So as you're drawing God, you might not be able to draw all of God. Maybe it'll be just a symbol of God, a place where you see God, a way that you express God within yourself. It might be, a chalice or a cross. Who knows, right? The thing is, you're getting 3 colors. Maybe your idea of God is flowers, and the colors you're getting are, black and gray. What you're dealt with, sort of the hand that you're dealt in life, has a lot of effect on how you see God. And how you see God has some effect on, sometimes the colors that you're dealt and how you work with those. So it's all perfectly random and unexpected. And there's a bit of God in that. So who wants to start? Who can show me what they've drawn? No? Should we sing while you're drawing? Oh, Kara's ready. Okay, Kara, show us what you got.
Can't see.
I got green, so I knew it was good because God involves green to me. So I wanted to sort of see this way. It looks sort of human-esque because of the way we think about it that way. But it's also the infinity symbol. And it's green because God represents growth to me, and there's spirals going both directions for both of those elements. And then I have brown. So I thought to me that was like stability and the support that comes from God, and those are on the side in little layers. And then I have this floral pinkish color, so I just use that for things coming out from God or the influence of God. And on this part, there's more of the direct ones, and down here, there's more of the squeezy ones.
So you're going to love this, but from a distance, to me, that looked like an abstraction of the Virgin of Guadalupe. Who else wants to share? David, you're an artist. It should be good.
I had an eye. So this is sort of an all-seeing God.
All-seeing God. Wow, now that's a theology. Barbara, is this an iris too?
No, it's not.
Okay.
Okay. This is the darkest color I had. So this was darkness. And then as it gets closer to the center, it gets lighter, and then the white light of God.
I am not the great artist, so I have stick figures. And this is a homeless man sleeping on a cot. We participate in Paynesville in an overnight warming center for the homeless. And I spent last night there, and I saw the face of God and many of the people of our guests.
Thank you. Kathy, how about stand up? Show us what you got.
I have an atom because we all came from the same place. We're all made of the same thing. We're all connected.
Mario, you want to take the mic and go around?
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? I drew a very poor picture of my dog because if I were inventing a God, I would want her to be as compassionate and as faithful and as kind as my dogs are.
Unconditional love, right? Thank you.
Well, you know, there's this whole theology built around being exactly the kind of person that your dog thinks you are.
All right, mine is just a little profile of a human being with arrows out, inward, and inward, outward, and then just kind of an amorphous world outside. And the conception of God here is a way for people to personalize and relate to all that's outside of them.
Tiffany.
Okay, so mine's kind of a crazy mandala, and if you're not familiar with that, that's kind of from Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism too, I believe. So kind of the circular idea, never ending, no beginning, no end, and then the spiral aspect too, representing eternity.
And constantly going deeper and transforming. Cool. Who else?
We have Martin here.
Oh, right, the whole, choir.
We got a whole bunch in the choir. Mine's kind of a depiction of the unseen dimensions, the 11 dimensions that many of them are wrapped from, people know it as brain theory or string theory or quantum mechanics. It goes back even simpler. But it all leads to our universes with our black holes and potentially other universes on the other side of those black holes, and on and on and on infinitely.
Ross?
I'm not much of an artist, but I wrote a great big question mark.
Thank you.
So Ross, what does the KKK burn on the front lawns of Unitarian Universalists? Question mark.
When I saw these colors, I knew what I had to draw. And actually, if I had gotten other colors, I probably would have drawn a tree anyhow, because I'm really into trees. In fact, my email name is Marie Tree.
On a similar vein, I got great colors of blue and green and the color of sunrise. So I did a nature scene that includes water, and it includes trees, and it includes my goldens. And it's a sunrise thinking about the potential of every day and every person. Thank you, Maggie.
So did we get everybody? Oh, we got one back there. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Lee. Well, some people aren't as good at hearing as you are at talking, so.
Hi. So I had like a peach color, a brown, and a green, and to me it honestly didn't matter, but the peach and the brown kind of started to look to me like just different people from around the world. And first and foremost, I drew a heart, because to me God is love. It's pretty simple. And then I did have kind of an all-seeing eye. And then I had a smile, because I think that once you recognize somebody, acknowledge someone, you see them, and your smile is in any language, and it's acceptance, and it's love, and people together, and it's real simple to me. So, a little elementary, but it is.
No, there's no such thing as elementary in something like this.
Lee, thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. So we've got things that range from nature and animals to religious symbols like mandalas and some pretty abstract concepts like interrelationship and energetic connectivity and quantum physics, right? So now I'm going to ask you to do something else. And while you were drawing, I forgot to tell you to not get too attached to your drawing. Because by the time we're done, it's not going to look like you're drawing anymore. So if you don't want to do this part, it's perfectly okay. What I'd like you to do is to take your drawing and hand it to somebody near you. Preferably somebody who is comfortable and is able to come up here with your drawing. Okay? So hand your drawing to somebody. Okay? Now, those of you... Hey, come on, folks. This is the easy part. So now, if you have the drawing, I want you to watch me really carefully, okay? We're going to tear the drawing. So we're going to go right down the middle the long way, almost to the end, but not all the way, okay? So go ahead and do that. And then turn it the other way so that the untorn side is at the top, right? And then about a quarter of the way over, tear it again. Almost to the end, and then do the same thing on the other side, so that what you're going to end up with is something that looks like this. And if it ends up looking like a hula skirt, it's okay. Okay? So what's the lesson in this? What's that? Destruction of artistic property. No, I was thinking more along the lines of, be careful about what you think about the divine, because as soon as you're holding onto it really tight, somebody's going to come along and tear it up and turn it into something else. So, if you've got this piece, please come forward with it. Even if it looks like a hula skirt, it's okay. Now, this is a hybrid of a long thing and a hula skirt. Okay. So what we're going to do, Mario, could you help me out with this? We're gonna tape all of these things together so that they make one big long one, okay?
That's okay. You can hang on the end.
Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. So now we've taken this and we have created something entirely different out of what were some pretty neat and orderly drawings that represented something. And we've created something entirely different. So as you're holding this, those of you holding it, how do you feel? What does this represent to you? Nancy. Like you're a piece of God. Good. God is all-encompassing. Anything else? Connectedness, relationship, yeah. And you can let go of it, right? God can fall to the ground and die the way he did in the 60s. Okay, so now let's try this. Let's try putting the ends together and making a ring.
Any conception of God.
What's that, Dan?
Any conception of God can be criticized.
Any construction of God can be criticized. How about if you come, I'm sorry. Why don't you come on this way? Yeah, like encompass Nancy. I like that. There we go. Now how do you feel? Unified. What was that, Ross? You feel like a fool? Good. Do you feel closer together now? Okay. Now let's try something radical. Go inside the ring. Okay, now how do you feel? Oh, okay. Anybody feel claustrophobic? No? Oh, come on, Ross, you've got to feel claustrophobic. Cool. Okay, nice. So, that's it. That's our whole project. But, before you go, God be with you. God be with you. So take pieces of this back to your seat and give it to people around you so that we can all have a little piece of God with us. So the thing about this is that this isn't some metaphor for making God, right? We actually, oh, you have a piece. We actually made God together. This whole process is God. Anybody else need some? Wow, how did this get... Here you go, Barbara. God be with you. God be with you, Grace. God be with you, Barb. So, thank you. Now I would like to invite you to stand and open your hymnal to number 347, Gather the Spirit. Seated and hold on to your hymnal and open to number 607. This is a responsive reading. And it's called Beloved Presence. And I'll read the parts that are in regular print, and I invite you to respond with the parts that are in italics. Cloak yourselves in 1,000 ways. Still shall I know you, my beloved.
Veil yourself with every enchantment, and yet I shall feel your presence most dear, close and intimate.
I shall salute you in the springing of cypresses and in the sheen of lakes, the laughter of fountains.
I shall surely see you in tumbling clouds, in brightly embroidered meadows.
O beloved presence, more beautiful than all the stars together.
I trace your face in ivy that climbs, in clusters of grace, in the morning flaming the mountains, in the clear arch of sky.
You gladden the whole earth and make every heart great.
You are the breathing of the world.
I'm Moria. When I started my chaplain internship in 2013 at Menorah Park Center for Senior Living in Beechwood, I didn't know what would be expected of me. My supervisor said I was to provide presence and deep listening, especially for those difficult emotions that the nurses and other staff maybe didn't have time to hear. And then for those who requested it, I was to offer spontaneous prayer that incorporates the patient's own words and feelings. Well, I felt that with some practice I'd be okay with presence and listening and even the difficult emotions. But the idea of spontaneous prayer made me nervous. As a Buddhist, how do I pray with people of other beliefs? Can I pray to God and Allah and Jesus and the Virgin Mary in a way that feels comfortable and comes across as authentic? After a while, my supervisor asked me how things were going. Surprisingly, I was able to tell him that I found something comforting and familiar about praying aloud with the patients and families. My parents were not big on praying together as a family, but they were sincere in their Protestant beliefs, and I had more positive associations with praying to God than I expected. But the most surprising thing I felt praying with patients was the welling up of my own powerful emotions once I got started, feeling very much moved by the experience. I decided that happens when I was making a real connection with the person, with her struggles and joys. Someone out there is nodding. So I think you know where I speak here. I believe that connection makes the moment sacred. Even in a nursing home activities room with the television blaring, someone with dementia shouting, and a staff member loudly announcing the arrival of cookies and punch, still, even there in the middle of chaos, sitting with that resident, listening and affirming his words and feelings, created a sacred space for us. And I found that along with that human connection, it was just the act of praying that embodied devotion and reverence. I think that too made the interaction feel special, set apart, and sacred, even if there were differing beliefs in the room. I realized that for me, the intended recipient of the prayer, whether God or our highest potential for compassion as human beings, or spirit, or spirits, the object of the prayer didn't seem to matter so much as the shared devotion and faith in those moments of heart-to-heart connection. I know when I feel down, I'm very happy when my friend Roseanne, who's a Christian chaplain, just listens and then prays for me. I learned that many people are just looking for that presence and openness when they're hurting. Vietnamese Zen Buddhist master Thich Nhat Hanh says in his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, in Buddhism, faith means confidence in our and others' abilities to wake up to our deepest capacity of loving and understanding. In Christianity, faith means trust in God, the one who represents love, understanding, dignity, and truth. When we are still looking deeply, says Thich Nhat Hanh, and touching the source of our true wisdom, we touch the living Buddha and the living Christ in ourselves and in each person we meet. Thich Nhat Hanh invites us to be still, to really look non-judgmentally within ourselves, and to sit with one another at times of suffering with the view of compassion. That should be easy. So I keep a Buddhist shrine at home, but I confess that sometimes my favorite place to sit is a chair by the window. The window looks out on my bird feeder and little garden covered with snow next to my table for the ancestors where I sit. And when I sit there, I don't feel any pressure to become peaceful or enlightened. I just sit there and watch the birds and look at the candle on the table or stare into space. Just sitting there helps to quiet those random thoughts, especially the negative ones. You know, the ones that are like bad movies that rattle around in your head with commercials and warning buzzers. A lot of warning buzzers in mine. Like one of those websites where there's so many ads popping up that you forgot what you went there to look for. Well, the chair is where I can sit and be still and let my mind rest. Right here, right now, at least for a little while. So I'd like to invite you today to participate in a short guided meditation. We're doing a lot of participating today, so this is a non-sectarian meditation to still the mind for a few minutes. I invite you to be still, each of us a still center individually and still within the embrace of our community. Feel free to close your eyes or leave them partly open, unfocused, or looking at the space in front of your nose. Sit up straight if you can, but relaxed, and mainly sit comfortably. Tuck your chin in slightly. Feel your shoulders open. Sit like a mountain, stable and still. Feel the support of your chair. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice your breathing. Breathe naturally. Notice as your breath arises, abides, and dissolves. Your breath arises, abides, and dissolves. And notice as your thoughts arise, abide, and dissolve. Let your thoughts go. Notice the sounds in the room. Let it go. And just sit. And now open your eyes and gradually return to the room. If there needs to be a name for our sacred nature, our capacity to love and nurture ourselves and others, animals, and the entire web of life, I like the name Divine Presence. It seems to me to be open to interpretation and spacious, and it suggests the verb to be present. May we be present. May we be attentive to the breath of the world and the web of life around us. May we remember to show up right now, right here, for ourselves and one another. May we remember, especially during the hard times, to be present to whatever or whoever inspires awe and reverence and joy in our hearts. We have a hymn next. We have the anthem next. I would like to say a few words to introduce the anthem because you're going to hear it twice, as an anthem and again as a postlude. This is a song from South Africa. It's a Zulu and English freedom hymn. And we will be singing it, the congregation will be led by the choir, and we will sing it in English, in Zulu once, and then English, and then Zulu, and then English.
Maria, that's
Yeah.
for the closing.
That's for the closing, so the choir's going to sing it now. So the choir's going to sing it now. Thanks. I'll stop talking.
Aren't you going to play, Maria?
Okay.
And one more. Do you want to tell them? It's 10:30, so they can follow it if they want.
It's hymn 10:30, and you can follow it. And this is a whole community thing. Like if I fall down, everyone else will help.
You're still getting out of your meditation.
Living through. I know, I did. I didn't snap out of it.
We are marching in the light of God. 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 We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. See a hammer, twinkle, twinkle, 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 see a hammer, see a hammer. See a are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God.
The reading this morning is a poem by Mary Oliver entitled The First Fish I Ever Caught. The first fish I ever caught would not lie down quiet in the pail, but flailed and sucked at the burning amazement of the air and died in the pouring off of rainbows. Later, I opened his body and separated the flesh from the bones and ate him. Now the sea is in me. I am the fish. The fish glitters in me. We are risen, tangled together, certain to fall back to the sea. Out of pain and more pain, we feed this feverish plot. We are nourished by the mystery.
Over the last few years, over the last dozen or so years, I've had the honor of serving a lot of different congregations in a lot of different capacities. I've been a member, a lay leader, a student, an intern, an affiliated community minister, been a developmental minister a couple times, even a minister of religious education. But my favorite role is probably the role of being the minister's spouse. In that role, I don't know, it was probably a couple of years ago now, I was facilitating a small group ministry that would meet once a month, and we would discuss the topic that was the theme for the congregation for that month for worship services. This was a really interesting group. I was by far the youngest person in this group of crusty humanists. They were free thinkers, the elders who had founded the fellowship, some of them going as far back as 60 years to the very beginning of the church. And they founded it with the idea that it shouldn't look anything like church at all. I mean, they were atheists, right? And they hated religious language. They hated all the falderall was a word that we heard a lot of the church. They really hated religious language, words like grace and salvation and sin and forgiveness. So one month, our topic was nothing less than God. And I have to tell you, at the beginning of our time together, expected to encounter folded arms and silence and resistance and maybe even some hostility. Instead, it turned out to be the best conversation we ever had in that little group. It was lively and challenging and respectful, and even though there was a lot of disagreement, it was the most engaged I'd ever seen the group. So I want to talk to you today a little bit about God in that same spirit of openness and knowing that we don't all agree, and that some people are profoundly troubled by the use of the G word in this place. But much of my theology, my understanding of what is of ultimate importance, is based on the writing of and commentary on a guy named Alfred North Whitehead. He was a professor of mathematics at Trinity College in Cambridge, England, at the turn of the last century. What made him unusual as a mathematician was that he was concerned with how and why we use math. He became interested in physics later on, the science of understanding what things are, what they're made up of, and how they work. So upon his retirement at age 63, Whitehead was invited to teach philosophy at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And there he spent 13 years developing a philosophy, an understanding of the universe that he called process. He wrote a book called Process and Reality, which was the foundation for other great thinkers to develop something that came to be known as process theology. Whitehead's studies drew students who wanted to understand the predictability and the chaos of the universe, how it could be both perfect and imperfect at the same time, all of it constantly changing yet staying exactly the same. Bernard Loomer was one of these students, and he summed up process theology this way. God is a verb. Now, the idea that God is a verb is not radically different from the philosophy that is often called New Thought, wherein we think of things not as collections of parts, but as systems. So that a tree is not a tree because it has roots and a trunk and branches and leaves. A tree is a tree because it germinates from a seed or from a rhizome of a parent tree and is fed nutrients through the earth, which is full of the decomposing plants and animals, and it absorbs light through its chlorophyll and converts carbon dioxide into oxygen. It's a tree because it provides shade. It's a tree because it provides homes for birds and rodents. I took a seminary class on process theology knowing a tiny bit about Loomer and even less about New Thought. The class was so complicated and so full of new words and new definitions of old words that our first reading, which was only 23 pages, came with a glossary written by Donald Sherburne. And the glossary was 44 pages. I've learned that trying to describe or explain process theology or Whitehead's philosophy, it just can't happen in a 1-hour service. So that's why I came up with the exercise that we did this morning, creating together the God that I understand through the lens of process theology. Now, this morning's reading, the poem that John read by Mary Oliver, explains a little about how God works. The fish smells like the ocean, and the ocean smells like the fish. The fish looks like the ocean looks like the fish, all silvery and scaly. And after she eats it, the fish is in the narrator, glittering, risen, tangled. The narrator and the fish have become one. So God is in the doing, not only the eating, but in the catching and the gutting. You know, it's not easy, this image of God. It's messy and it's gory and there's no sugarcoating. And that's exactly how God works. God is not just sweetness and light and love. God is every moment of every life, including death. Because really, when it comes right down to it, in order for any sentient being to live, something else must die. Now, even if you don't eat fish or flesh, any other kind of flesh, you have to subsist on something. You subsist on vegetation. And a plant grows alive until that moment when it's picked or falls to the ground of its own weight. In that instant, death begins, and the constant downward spiral of decomposition until that vegetation makes its way into our bodies and nourishes us to become us. In process theology, moments are important. In fact, one could say that the only real thing in the universe is a moment. And a moment is smaller than a second. In the second it takes to say 1,000, there are 4 syllables, 10 sounds, and 14 letters. And countless moments, each imperceptibly tiny. They're so tiny that they die as they are born, so that life and death are one and the same. A single moment can be uneventful, say sitting in a chair alone in an empty room. Or a moment can be life-changing, say a spark that ignites an explosion in that same room. Imagine one moment of your life, any moment in which you are seeing someone you love, creating a picture of God, or eating a persimmon. And at the same time, more than 7 billion other people on the planet are each also having a moment. And that's only the people. Add to that all the other living things like algae, insects, house pets, wildlife, and every species of bird. Out into space, into the edges of an ever-expanding universe. More moments are happening at once than any one of us is even capable of imagining. And no living thing exists in perfect solitude, so we're all related to everything else, directly or indirectly. Now put all those experiences, the actions of every single living thing together, and that is the experience of God. That means that something so tiny, something so short-lived that its birth and death are the same thing, is also so expansive that it encompasses the entire universe. And that's God. God is not the being that makes the universe, but the simultaneous experience of everything. Now, most people think of God as a noun, a person. Often, especially here in the Western Hemisphere, God is thought of as being a man, a kind of godfather, a kind of grandfather with a long white beard, somebody who, if you play your cards right, you'll be able to see and hear and even touch someday. In fact, I was kind of surprised that nobody drew a picture of that old man today. So when people have that conception of God, they talk to God and they ask for help in times of suffering. They express gratitude for blessings or simply marvel in the awe and wonder of the universe. One of my favorite writers, Anne Lamott, describes 3 different kinds of prayers. She summarizes as thanks, help, and wow. Prayers of intercession, gratitude, and awe are the most common forms of prayer and perhaps the most effective. But the way I see it, they're effective not because some being out there is listening to and changing our world to accommodate us and our needs, but because we are changed in the process of prayer. The way I see it, God isn't a person addressed in the prayer. God is the act of praying, the act of taking the time to see the joy and the suffering in the world and to express help, thanks, or wow. God is when we hear the cries of babies and the wisdom of the ancestors. God is when we reach out to touch something and we find in front of us and allow it to change us into something new as we affect its future. So what we did this morning when we drew images of God in order to turn them into something else weren't just symbols of God or metaphors for God or metaphors for a creative process outside of our control. The act of drawing and transforming were God. And it bound us together in a way that can't be undone, the way a bell can't be unrung. Even if you walk away from our time together this morning and never think about that silly exercise again, you're changed by it. The way your mere presence in the room while we did it affected the outcome. You are God, and God is you. You create God as much as God creates you, perhaps more. Ancient Jews, I think, understood this. In the book of Genesis, when Moses asked God's name, God responded by saying Yahweh. And the best translation of the Hebrew word Yahweh is, I am what I am. Only the word is without subject. The I is merely understood. That means it's just a verb. It's sort of am, only like all other Hebrew verbs at the time, it doesn't have tense. So it could mean was, is, will be, or will have been. So Yahweh is a complex, multifaceted verb. Yahweh is a verb. God is a verb. And I think the ancient Jews understood that. So what I'm saying when you hear me invoke the name of God, the word God, is not that I want some super being to come and intervene on my behalf or on our behalf because we're somehow incapable of doing things ourselves. What I'm saying is that I want energy to be present. The energy of creativity and compassion and even justice. An embodiment of what we believe and how we can love one another. When I pray and worship, I'm calling upon the force of our being that can bear the weight of our pain and create life. The force of our being is the sum of all the ancestors who have come before us. And prayers serve as a reminder that none of us has created ourselves out of nothing. Prayer serves as a reminder that we all stand on the shoulders of everyone who has come before us, that we live our lives amidst a great cloud of witnesses, who, though they be dead, can continue to affect our lives in ways that we can't even begin to understand. It's difficult for people in our congregation sometimes to talk about God. Many of us, including myself, have been hurt in the past by churches who created a God that met their own needs, a God that uses violence as a form of vengeance. The words of Scriptures have been preserved not for what they were intended, as a collection of stories and songs that help us make meaning of our lives and see our own narratives as timeless. Scriptures have been chosen from the vastness of all human writing as the justification for oppression. But their ill use or their lack of quantifiable fact doesn't make them any less true. Just look at the Christian Bible. 2,000 years ago, brothers resented each other to the point of murder. Husbands abused wives. Wives sold their husbands out to the enemy. Grown offspring struggled to find autonomy. People were killed for their beliefs or for leaving lands of famine for lands of plenty, even as they created a miracle by sharing the bit they had to feed others. Poor people learned how to help one another. Babies were born. And every one of these acts was a miracle. So why is any of this important to me? This image of God I have is so completely different from the image portrayed to the religious right that most of them wouldn't even recognize that as God. And my reading of Christian Scripture is so liberal, it would make Jesse Helms' head explode if he were still alive. The image of God I have is important partly because I want to believe there's something greater than me that holds us together, something greater than any one of us that gives our lives meaning, not just now, but in the long arc of history. I want to believe that there's something binding us together beyond our common decision to leave the New York Times crossword puzzle at home and to miss Charles Osgood and have coffee together. This image of God I have is important because when a religious conservative publicly says something like, God doesn't want those people to marry, or God doesn't want them to live among us, or God wants us to act out violently in His name, we can stand up and say, no, you're wrong. God is creative. God is inclusive. God is beauty, diversity, wholeness, pain, suffering, and justice. And there is no hell. We could own that discourse the way Hosea Ballou and Theodore Parker did. Now, I'm not an idiot. I know we will never be able to change the minds of those whose ideas are at the other end of the spectrum from our own. But we can change the public discourse by standing up and saying, you don't have exclusive rights to God. In being so bold, we'll find others like us, those who are seeking truth and meaning, but don't buy into the idea of the angry guy with the white beard playing us like puppets and telling us to do horrific things. We can show the world that there is faith out there that has room for them in their wholeness. We can show the world that there is faith that is inclusive, creative, and loving. That, after all, is the saving grace of Unitarian Universalism. But it's important that we engage in this dialogue together, using this language full of these words that make us uncomfortable. Because if we don't talk about what we believe to be sacred and holy and transcendent and important amongst each other, then how can we ever have this conversation out in the public sphere where it could make a difference? So I'd like to end with a little prayer. Spirit of life, source of love and compassion, eternal force of creation, force that we create each time we gather and each time we reflect in silence and solitude. We know that you are here with us and in us this morning. When we stop to pay attention to the vibrations of the universe and the vibrations of our own bodies, we feel your presence. May we open our hearts and our minds to your ceaseless existence and boundless potential. The potential that exists within each of us, individually and collectively. May we open our hearts and minds to what you call us to do and to break down the invisible barriers we build, the myth of separateness that we hold on to as a false sense of security and independence. May we open our hearts and minds to the hurts of the world and to find in that pain the strength to change, the strength to accept that which cannot be changed, and to live into the silence. Amen. I'd like to invite you now to stand as you're willing and able, or to remain seated if that moves you, and open your hymnal to number 108, Come and Go With Me. I'm sorry, the teal hymnal to 1018, Come and Go With Me. Said everything I just said, I kind of envy preachers who believe in an angry, vengeful God. I mean, seriously, they can stand up in front of their congregations and tell folks to open up their wallets and give everything they have or face hellfire and damnation. They can face the wrath of God the Father in the sky, right? I mean, for them to be stingy is to face terror in the afterlife. But we don't believe any of that. If I were to say that, you'd laugh at me. You'd laugh me right out of this joint. So instead, I have to put forth to you the message that to give, to be generous, is to participate in making the world kinder and more abundant. So that's what I'm inviting you to do this morning. To be as generous as you can be, to help us help the world. This morning's offering will now be accepted. And if you're a visitor, please let the collection plate pass you as our guest.
Blow in the wind.
I thank you for these gifts, given with love and accepted with the promise to use them conscientiously and fairly, and with the generosity with which they're offered. May we use these gifts of plenty and the gifts of our very lives to transform the world and ourselves. And for all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. And for all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it step by step.
So now I'll introduce the song again. I did want to say that this is the month of Martin Luther King's birthday, and this is a song about marching. He marched many, many miles for justice, so we sing this in his honor. And we will have a chance to make music as we have made God together. So we'll sing the Zulu and the English, and then we'll have a chance for us to create a 7-word lyric that fits in. So just to go through the Zulu with you, it's Siyahamba Eku Kanyen Kwenkos.
Can you give me the number again?
Siyahamba Eku Kanyen Kwenkos. And it's number 1030 in your teal hymnal. And I'm actually singing a kind of a simpler version of the melody. So if you would like to, you can follow what I'm doing if you want to. Because there's some more choral arrangements in our hymnal which the choir is
slaughtering.
Beautifully.
Slaughter was beautiful.
I'll come down here. Do you prefer to stand or sit? You're good sitting. Sit.
We are dancing